Hi, everyone. This is Sarabjit. You may be watching this live session in our Facebook group, Business Analyst and Scrum Master in Demand, or our YouTube channel. The topic for training today is business analyst documentation. So as we know, there are two environments where we are developing projects, right? So in the waterfall scenario, we have a role called business analyst. And in the agile environment, we have a role called Scrum Master. And we also have hybrid organizations which have both a business analyst and a scrum master. So it becomes really critical for you to understand what type of organization you're in, whether you're in waterfall or agile or a hybrid organization, which kind of uses things from waterfall and agile. So the goal here today is for me to talk to you guys about the type of documentation that business analysts are responsible for in the waterfall methodology. If you are watching me live, please leave a comment and let me know that you are watching this session live. And if you have, of course, any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments and I will get to your questions. If you are watching this as a replay, please let me know you're watching this as a replay so we may be able to gauge the timing of these training sessions. Okay, so with that said, let me get started. And to reiterate, the goal of this live session today is to talk to you guys about the waterfall methodology and the documentation that business analysts are generally responsible for. And what I've done is I've gone one step ahead and I've created a diagram that shows you the documentation per phase that business analysts are responsible for, as well as project managers, because as we know, right, generally, if your PMs need help with documentation that they're generally responsible for, that business analysts do step up to the mark and should be able to help out the PM. So what I've done is I've created a map that shows you the phase and the documents and the roles responsible for creating those. But as we all know, sometimes we're required to wear many hats, right? Not outside of the traditional business analyst role. So I thought this may be helpful to you. So with that said, let me share my screen. Let me make sure and see if we have any comments, and we don't at the moment. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second. I think this is, okay, this is the right one. So this is, let me make the screen a little bit bigger for you guys to see. So what this is I've created a document. It's a little bit too big. Okay. Let me see if I can make this one 60. Okay, let's try 170. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Okay, so you guys, what I've done is in the waterfall methodology or waterfall environment, we generally see the phases that are represented on the top of here. So we have generally pre-planning, we have planning, analysis, design, development, testing, and implementation, right? So what this means is, give me 1 second, maybe I have a better one and that I can share. Okay, this one may be a better one to share. Okay. So here we are, you guys. So waterfall scenario, right? Waterfall methodology. And the phases that we generally have in waterfall are pre-planning, sometimes planning, analysis, design, development, testing, and implementation, right? And these are there to help us, go from ideation generally of projects to going through and implementing them, right? And on this side, on the left-hand side, are generally the document types or events that take place in a role as a business analyst, right? And then I've listed a role responsible. So generally, you'll see lots of documentation or areas of responsibility fall for a PM or a BA. only because we in this channel are mostly focused on business analyst, scrum master, and project management roles. There are other roles that are involved in making projects successful, and I don't list those out only because our focus here is for business analysts, scrum masters, and PMs. And what I've done with this side of the diagram is to showcase light means less of a business analyst role. As the orange gets darker, this is where business analysts are primarily involved, right? As you know, that generally business analysts are very, very active in the analysis phase, and then they're very, very active during the testing phase. So this was just a visual representation to help you see this a little bit easier. Okay. So what happens when we start a project? How do projects get started, right? So we have listed here as the first item here as a business case. And yeah, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you guys. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Okay, so the first document that I've listed here is the business case, right? The second, let me see if I can move this. Okay, I can't. So the first item listed here is the business case, right? The role responsible is generally leadership, right? And this is where it's in the pre-planning phase. A business case is where we create or identify return on investment for all projects that we want to get done. So this is before a project becomes a project. This is where leadership or department heads generally get together and say, hey, for the upcoming budget year, or for the upcoming fiscal year, or for the upcoming planning purposes, we would like to do these projects. And the reason why we do a business case is generally there's a lot more projects that teams or areas want to complete than there is budget to do all of them. So we generally put together a business case to help us identify which projects make the most sense for the company and for our customers at that time. So that's what generally the goal of a business case is, to identify which projects get approved to work on. And generally, as a business analyst and a scrum master or a project manager, we understand or know about projects once they've been approved by leadership to be projects. So once they are, we generally work on something called a project charter. The role responsible is a PM and a BA or a BA. And a project charter is a document that identifies high-level scope, high-level timelines, high-level stakeholders and high-level goals and objectives of the project, right? And it is a document that generally is signed off, right? So once we create it, we send it around for signature from our team leads, our key stakeholders to sign. And with the project charter is how a project actually becomes official. The question I often get is, hey, my project doesn't have a project charter, and that's normal too. Sometimes not all projects have project charters, but they should. So what makes a project an official project is a project charter because it identifies high-level scope, timelines, and goals and objectives of the project. It also identifies high-level budget for the project, okay? So once we have a project charter, this is where now we're still in the planning phases. After we have a project charter, our business analysts maybe start to do use case diagrams. Use case diagrams are used to brainstorm functionality, brainstorm how our users interact with the system. So business analysts will start to maybe do some level of use case diagrams. And then the next a few of these items, project management plan, stakeholder management plan, requirements management plan, project schedule. These are things that are typically done by a project manager. And these are plans that generally don't change at the project level. These are plans that provide context on how we plan on managing the project. So for example, stakeholder management, why your stakeholders for each project may be different, the way that you want to engage and work with the stakeholders generally does not change from project to project. Your project schedule will look very different from project to project, as well as your requirements management plan. This is a plan where it talks about how we're going to be capturing the requirements, right? And what techniques, what formats, how do we formalize requirements. So it's again a management plan that doesn't deviate too much from project to project, but it is something that is updated at the project level. Okay. The next set of items are for the business analyst. This is where now we're starting to meet with our stakeholders and we start to do workflow diagrams. I personally, for my favorite topics or things that we work with, or workflow diagrams, it's one of my favorite techniques to identify requirements, because it helps me identify things that our stakeholders may not be telling us. Not that they don't want to, but they may not remember to include those details. So the next few items are techniques that we use to gather requirements. And here we are already in the analysis phase, which is the primary phase in the waterfall environment that business analysts play at. So we have workflow diagrams, we have chat sessions, we have surveys, and the output of all of these workflow diagrams, chat sessions, surveys, interviews, right? The output of all of those, meeting with your stakeholders, understanding requirements, is to document them in a business requirements document, right? And that generally is the role of a BA. We also have something called functional requirements documents. That is also the role of a BA. And one of the questions that I get often is, what is the difference between a BRD and FRD? So a BRD, most organizations combine a BRD and FRD and just call it a BRD, right? But if your organization is one where they have BRDs that are separate than FRDs, then the caveat there is your BRD is supposed to be high level requirements from a business intent, and your FRD includes what those business requirements are in a little bit more detail. So an example may be, so if your organization is working on bringing on a CRM, the requirement in a BRD may be to onboard a CRM to help with whatever the business needs are. And then a functional requirement would be more detailed to say the goal of implementing the CRM is to allow customers the ability to have a form that enters new customer information into our existing database, to create reports on those customer database from the customer database and send it out to various departments. So generally your functional requirements document the functional needs of your stakeholders, while a BRD documents a business requirement, right? So generally, if you have both a BRD and FRD, BRDs are high level, FRDs are a little bit more detailed. And this is why most organizations combine both documents and call them the BRD, okay? So that's the role of a business analyst. The next step, so once we have a BRD or FRD that's final and complete, we send those around for signature, right? Because we want to lock the requirements at that point. So once we lock the requirements, we call our requirements complete, right? So that means that once we have signature on the requirements, any deviations or changes to the requirements will require a change request, okay? I'll pause there to see if you guys have any questions at all on the topics that I've covered. If not, I'll continue moving along. So I'm monitoring the comments in the group. Let me know if there are any questions here. Okay, cool. No questions so far. Great. So here we are. We have our requirements are complete. Our requirements have sign off. Now we want to generally, once we have complete requirement or completed the analysis phase, we take what we have BRD/FRD or just BRD, we take that, then the next person in line is a business systems analyst. And what they will do generally is they will review the requirements and translate the requirements into something called a technical specification document or system specification document that has a little bit more detail on how to code. So your BRD, FRD are business intents and what the business wants. Your technical specification or system specification documents talk about the how. So where our BRD talks about the functionality that the business teams want, so the what, our technical documents talk about the how, and once those are created, those are then handed off to our developers and programmers to code and to program. So once we have our BRD signed off, we then start to work on something called an RTM, Requirements Traceability Matrix. This is where I am right now. This is a role of a business analyst to do. So generally, when you have an RTM, right, what is an RTM? RTM is nothing more than an Excel document that takes all of your requirements that have been signed off on. We take all of those requirements and we list them out in an Excel spreadsheet. So the goal of an RTM is to track requirements from end to end, from completion to end. So that means that if, let's say we have, 75 requirements in our BRD, we list all those 75 requirements in an Excel document that's called our RTM for the project. Then we identify for each requirement the how-to for the technical specification or system specification document. So every requirement should map to the how that requirement needs to get done. So each requirement then maps to a technical specification requirement or a system specification requirement. And then furthermore, we use the RTM to track the end-to-end of the project. So the things that you will find in RTM are your requirements for sure, your technical specification document, system specification document. You will find test scripts, the acceptance criteria, and whether that functionality passed or failed, right? And this is why the RTM is one of the most common tools and documents that you work on as a business analyst, because at time of UAT, generally your business teams will want to see the RTM to make sure that all of their requirements that we all agree to are actually were created, were tested, and that functionality passed for them to sign off on UAT, which is user acceptance testing. Okay, so the next next item on the list is a UAT plan, user acceptance testing plan. This is a role of a BA, and what a UAT plan consists of is identifying how and planning on how we're going to do UAT. UAT is user acceptance testing. And the goal of UAT is to have our stakeholders that gave us requirements at the beginning of the project, have them go in and test to validate that the functionality is working as intended, right? And generally our business analysts, they plan for UAT, they monitor UAT when UAT is in flight, and they are very close to the stakeholders and developers in QA as your stakeholders are testing, okay? The last item I have on the list are test scripts and test cases. Those are primarily created by quality assurance analysts or QA. But as I've said earlier in my video is that a lot of times business analysts are required to wear many different hats. And since they're required to wear many different hats, it is possible that you as a business analyst may be required to create the test scripts or test cases. And if that's the case, the role is listed as a business analyst or a QA. And so once you create those test scripts, you generally, the QA teams will be the ones to execute the test scripts during testing. And generally, sometimes we also share those test cases, test scripts with our stakeholders for review to make sure that we on the QA side are capturing and testing the functionality as it needs to work, okay? And that's usually an informal process. It's not something that is formally done. Some project teams may do it, some project teams may not, but some project teams most of the project teams that I've been part of, we do send our test cases, test scripts to our stakeholders for them to review and validate that we haven't, as teams on the IT side have not forgot to test or forgot to test a specific scenario. Okay. And then the last item I have that business analysts are generally responsible for are the training documents, cheat sheets, anything to help your stakeholders get used to and familiar with the new system. Okay. So generally, again, the goal of this session was to talk to you guys about the waterfall methodology. I've showcased to you guys the different roles, and I've also showcased to you guys what, from a business analyst PM standpoint, do we do in the waterfall scenario. All right. I hope, let me know. I'll pause here again for any questions you guys may have. Let me know if you found this helpful. Let me know if you have any questions on this. And as always, let me know additional topics you guys would like to learn about. I'm always here to help and support you and to help your growth in this environment as something that I like to give back to my own community. I hope you guys found this helpful. Let me pause there to see if there's any questions. And if there's not any questions for now, let me know if there's any questions. You can feel free to leave a comment either in the Facebook group or the YouTube channel, and I will get back to you guys. I do check all of your comments. I do respond to all of your comments. Sometimes it takes me a little while, but I do get back to you. All right. I don't see any questions right now. Again, I hope you found this helpful. Thank you so much for all the love and support that you've given me. It actually is encouraging to read your comments. It keeps me going. So thank you so much for the time and effort that you put into learning and to encouraging me in keep doing this. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in our next live session. Take care. Bye.